Today's Bible reading is about Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came. And it comes from the beginning of a book in the Bible called the Acts of the Apostles. Jesus told his friends to wait in Jerusalem, to wait for the helper he had promised to send them. So they waited. They waited and they prayed for 10 days. And while they waited, the streets of Jerusalem filled up with people from every land. People from the north and the south, people from the east and the west. People from all around the world came together to celebrate the feast of Pentecost. Jesus' friends were in an upstairs room when suddenly surprising things began to happen. They heard a wind blow harder than the fiercest storm, but nothing was blown about. They heard the flickering of flames. They watched tongues of fire lick and lap and land on their heads. But nobody smelled any smoke. And then the Helper came, the Holy Spirit, and he filled them all with the presence and power of God. And what they heard next was talking, strange words pouring out of each and every mouth. So they rushed outside, eager to tell the crowd what had happened. And now suddenly everyone could understand. People from the north and the south, people from the east and from the west, people from all around the world. For now Jesus' friends were able to speak in foreign languages they had never learned, all because of God's Holy Spirit. What better way to tell the world about Jesus? "So what's that all about?" said the man from Spain. "That's amazing," said the woman from Africa. "Tell me again," asked a man from France. But there were others who thought Jesus' friends were just talking nonsense. "These people are drunk," one man shouted. "It's nothing but a load of gibberish." And that's when Peter stood up. Peter, who had been with Jesus from the start. Peter, the fisherman. Peter, who had never made a speech in his life. "Listen, everybody," he shouted. "We're not filled with wine, we're filled with something else. God's own Holy Spirit." Many years ago, God's prophet said this would happen, that God would send his Spirit to help, not just the special people like prophets and kings, but everyone. That has happened to us today. And it has happened because Jesus, who died on a cross, was brought back to life by God himself and now sits beside God in heaven. It was Jesus who sent this wonderful gift to us. Jesus, the special one we've been waiting for all these years. Jesus, who was put to death. The people were sorry for what had been done to Jesus. "What can we do?" they cried. "Tell God you're sorry," said Peter. "Let him wash away all the bad things you have done, and you will receive his Holy Spirit too." So that's what the people did. 3,000 of them. They told God they were sorry. They were baptized and they were filled with God's Holy Spirit. People from the north and the south. People from the east and from the west. People from all over the world. I wonder what you felt as you heard that story, the story of the beginning of the life of the church, the first time that the Spirit came to so many people. We're going to think for a moment about the wind that came and the fire that came. Wind is something we can't see. We can feel it and we can see what it does. Think of what's been happening in India and Bangladesh in the last few days. Here are a couple of pictures, but I'm sure you will have seen others. Sometimes the wind can be quite gentle. It feels refreshing when there's a cool wind on a hot day. Wind can also be used to generate energy, like using these giant wind turbines, like the ones you can see just on this film now. Wind is powerful. We cannot control it, but we can use it. It may be difficult to stand up against, but it might also be refreshing. The other sign that we heard about in our reading was fire, tongues, flames of fire. And like wind, fire can be dangerous. Just think of the Australian bushfires in January of this year. Or think how easily, if you drop a match and it catches something, fire can take off. That's why we don't play with matches. Fire can also purify. To make silver or gold, it is put through very hot fire so that what is impure is taken out. It can create energy, particularly heat. I wonder how many of us have wood fires that burn in our houses in winter. In the Bible, both wind and fire are signs that we need to take a notice of, signs that show us what God is doing. In the Bible, often, if there was wind or fire, it meant God was there. There were other signs as well, but wind and fire are two of them. And so when the wind and the fire come on the day of Pentecost, it sounds like wind, it looks like fire, it's not actually wind and fire. When they come, people take note because they know that this means that God is there. Jesus had promised his disciples that the Holy Spirit would come with power, and the wind and the fire are signs to them that God has indeed come. He has fulfilled his promise. Fire is catching. Wind is powerful, as is fire. And this Holy Spirit gives to the disciples a new energy and a new excitement. They're able to tell God's good news to those who are watching, and many come to follow Jesus. And today too, God promises his Holy Spirit to those who follow him. He promises that he will come and help us to tell others of God's good news. We can't always know what the Holy Spirit is going to do in our lives. Like wind and fire, it may at times feel overwhelming, but God is still there. He still promises his power and his help. So let's trust him today. Here are some pictures of some things that you might like to make that can catch the wind. And then there's also a video of Clive making a kite, a way of showing which way the wind is blowing. Then there's going to be a song, and that will be followed by our prayers.
Hi, welcome to making a kite. This can be done with a plastic bag or a piece of paper if you have them. Firstly, you're going to need paper or plastic to make the kite, 2 equal length sticks, probably barbecue sticks, rulers, scissors, sticky tape. Now for mine, I used a plastic bag. So we're going to start by marking out, and the thing you need to know is that you use thirds. So I've marked, using the ruler, halfway on one stick. That's going to be the stick that goes across the kite. Also, I've marked thirds. So I've measured the length, divided by 3, and that gives you a third. That will be the point that the sticks will go together to cross the kite over. We're going to use those to measure the rest as well. So what I did, I cut down one side and along to open out the bag. I used the stick that is going to be across, so the wings that has the half mark, I used that to mark out using my pen on the side. The more accurate you make it, the more even it will fly. So I mark the centre line from the stick onto the plastic as well, and mark that down. Now, using the one with a third, the shorter length part of that will go to the top. So you mark that in the centre and on each wing. Right, we're going to cut out. You'll need some sharp scissors, probably kitchen scissors or something like that is good. Right, so have one kite and it's marked with the crossover point. I like using thin string, or I've got some embroidery thread which is a little bit thicker than standard cotton thread. So if you wrap round and tie where the 1/3 mark and the half mark join up. So you overlay your plastic. So it's very simple. You try and get the same sort of length of sticky tape, because the more even it is, the more evenly the weight is distributed, the better it'll fly. So you stick it down and fold it over the top, just for a bit of extra strength. The wonderful thing about this is that you can use any size of stick or skewer that you can find, because it works on the rule of thirds. So all you need to be able to do is half it to get the half mark, and thirds to get your diamond shape. I tend to cut sort of strips for the tail, and you can use any of that leftover plastic or paper to create a tail. So you can also use a bit of tape to stick that on, because a little bit of weight at the back of it will help it fly more evenly. And there you go. Enjoy flying your kite.